Good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 26th, and this is Q News Tonight, the world's first live LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news.
Our Q headlines tonight will report Ireland's Prime Minister caused a stir by appearing shirtless with his boyfriend.
Kevin Hart thinks he deserves to move on after his stupid homophobic joke.
Pixar is out of the closet. A new short on Disney Plus features the studio's first gay main character.
Supreme Court affirms that disallowing gender-affirming surgery for trans inmate is cruel and unusual punishment.
Love Simon's sequel, Love Victor's first full trailer premiered this afternoon.
In Quarantine Quickies, we break down the facts for testing, cases, and the incredible milestone of 100,001 USA deaths and 7,000 American LGBTQ deaths.
Plus, we report that Congress calls on federal government to gather LGBTQ data for coronavirus.
Also breaking news that smoking may increase the risk of catching COVID-19. And tonight's coronavirus good news that we'll report on later.
In commentary, we take note on masks and Memorial Day and toxic masculinity of Trump, Putin, and Brazil.
In the Big Finish, we will dish and read on Lady Gaga versus Ariana Grande.
PETA holds a Nintendo video game protest about a virtual fish museum. A youth pastor concocts story on why he is in a hotel room with black men.
The inflatable Safe Hugs hippo costume. And times are tough, apparently, because Pensacola lists its stadium on Airbnb for $1,500 a night.
And what you didn't know about Ian McKellen and his 81st birthday.
Good evening again, America. It is 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 26, 2020. It's time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we're going to tell tonight on Q News Tonight. Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Thank you for joining Q News Tonight. We are live, as you already can tell, so anything can happen. Tonight, we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBTQ community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and this is my co-guest anchor, Misty Eyes, and anchor Napoleon Plays. Let's get right to it. Let's cue up the news.
First, Happening Out sponsors the largest LGBTQ live religious broadcast in the world. Sunshine Cathedral's church service, Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Every week, more than 30,000 watch. We invite you to join us.
The Happening Out television network is the largest live LGBTQ media platform on the planet.
With Q News Tonight, It's Happening Out, and Happening.fun, our network is the most important live LGBTQ video website in the world, with the largest amount of web visitors and traffic on the planet.
In April, more than 2.2 million viewers watched our shows on YouTube TV and Facebook TV. We continue to be LGBTQ America's #1 source of news, talk, and entertainment.
Tonight we bring you Q headlines. The LGBTQ community in America is diverse. The LGBTQ community around the world is vast. We bring you a bullet point of the queer news for today, Tuesday, May 26, 2020. We begin by queuing up the world. Ireland's Prime Minister caused a stir this weekend by appearing shirtless with his boyfriend. Leo Varadkar, the Irish gay Prime Minister, was seen in a park with his boyfriend over the weekend, which has caused quite a stir given the fact that strict COVID-19 regulations are still in place in the country. Many have defended him by pointing out that he and his boyfriend live together, so they don't need social distancing.
Remember when you were little and you saw your teacher for the first time ever at like Walmart or Blockbuster Video? I think this is part of the reason people are freaking out. Like, wait a minute, he's not in a suit and a tie. And they're like, he's a real person doing real things.
No, I don't think it's that. I think that people have unnecessary standards for straight people versus gay people. And right now, him being outdoors with the person he lives with, socially distanced from everyone else, is completely safe. And targeting him is just a homophobic move.
I partially agree with that, because the two things that are stark about the news of this reporting over the weekend is, first, that a president of a major Western country would be out in public socially with their partner and be shirtless. That's cool. And second, the partner happens to be of the same sex. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Cue up entertainment. Kevin Hart thinks he deserves to move on after his stupid homophobic joke. Last year, following an announcement that he would host the 2019 Oscars, it emerged that Hart had called gay people fags and mocked lesbians in a series of social media posts between 2009 and 2012. Kevin Hart, 40, has now spoken out against being so-called canceled for his homophobia, insisting that, and I quote, "Nobody is perfect." He again this week asked for forgiveness and moving on.
So, first of all, if we take it out of context and somebody said the N-word 15 years ago, would that make them a bad person, or could they change? So if you change the context, yes, I do think as human beings we can grow and we can change, and I'm sorry. And now Kevin's way more mainstream. His beginning comedy was very adult. So maybe he changed his tune. I personally forgive him, but I don't know if it would be so easily forgiven if the roles were reversed.
How much community service do you have to put in before you're paroled? That's the question here. And the standard is, how long and how many apologies is enough?
Right.
At some point, we have to say, that's enough.
From our community, I agree with you, Al, but from Kevin Hart's perspective, I think he just needs to move on. At a certain point, the people are going to feel what they do, and he can either keep bringing it up and reminding people that this happened, or just show with his actions and what he says from now on that that's not who he was, and let his actions speak louder.
We cue up entertainment by reporting very interesting and exciting news. I know Napoleon's commented on it over the weekend. Pixar is out of the closet. I wasn't sure that they were, but they have a new short on Disney Plus that features the studio's first gay main character. Out, a short film from Pixar Animation Studios streaming on Disney Plus, features Pixar's first gay main character, who is named Greg. As the official tagline puts it, quote, "With some help from his precious pup and a little bit of magic, Greg might learn that he has nothing to hide." Pixar is once again trying to leave us all in tears, and personally, I love it.
They actually succeeded, as they frequently do, at leaving me in tears. Keep in mind, this is a short, so you can go and watch this in literally 9 minutes. You have no reason not to if you have Disney Plus or have a friend that has it. And it's so gay. It has so many gay themes in it. It has some like electronic dance music to start in. It has a rainbow. It has cats and dogs and pup play. And it waits the entire time, and maybe a little bit of a spoiler, but they don't actually use the word gay. There's so much going on in this. It definitely was touching, and I'm probably going to watch it like 5 more times.
I love that you say it's so gay, but you mean it in a positive way. And also, I think that it's very important that children see themselves reflected in media.
Pixar and Disney doing something positive for the LGBT community. That is not headlines. What would really be a headline from this moment of Pixar doing this is that we no longer report stories like this because they are so commonplace.
Cue up the USA. The Supreme Court affirms that disallowing gender-affirming surgery for trans inmate is cruel and unusual punishment. The case was about 31-year-old inmate Andre Edmo, held in an Idaho men's facility. Idaho's governor, Brad Little, had been vigorous in appealing this through the court systems, but the Supreme Court simply gave a brief order saying the request had been denied. It was noted that Justices Thomas and Alito would have granted the state's request.
I think this story is very sad. It is cruel and unusual punishment. And I do think that the government, and especially somebody in prison, I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, several trans women would get arrested on purpose so they could get free hormones, because they used to give you free hormones in jail. And I think they should take care of all their inmates' needs, dental care, for example, and gender-affirming surgery.
Monday is June 1st, and it begins Pride Month. I am so tired in the near 5 months that I have been involved in Q News Tonight of reporting terrible trans story after trans story after trans story. It's got to change.
If you want to take a look at this from a fictional approach, there was this exact story. Obviously, it wasn't real people, but in Orange is the New Black, you watch Laverne Cox's character go through it. You can feel the same heartbreak there, but this is happening in real life. It's unfortunate that it mirrors so directly what happened in it because it's not a very positive story.
Cue up entertainment. Love Victor's first full trailer premiered this afternoon. From the creators of the hit movie Love, Simon, Love, Victor has taken the internet by storm today as the trailer only made the anticipation for the June 19th release on Hulu, when all 10 episodes of the first season will drop, all the harder. This is just another in a long line of wins for Disney, and as a company when it comes to being inclusive.
Pixar, Disney, pro-LGBT, blah, blah, blah. However, I do love Simon, and I can't wait to watch this. And I love that they are going to download all of the series episodes at one time, which is one of the reasons why we love Netflix and Hulu. It's going to be quite exciting. I can't wait to see this new inclination of the story.
Yeah, this show is on Hulu because they consider it a little bit more adult. So I'm hoping that they do go through some more of the themes versus Out, which is on Disney+. This one could really deal with some, tension that people experience as teenagers, and we all go through it, gay or straight. And I really hope that they focus on that and how we are all the same, even if we're different.
I'm excited, just like you, Napoleon. I hope they do approach some of the more adult LGBTQ, like drugs, alcohol, suicidal tendencies, etc. And like Al, I hate it when my shows come out once a week and then I forget about them. I want to watch the whole thing in 2 days.
Yes, power watching.
Yeah.
We cue up the USA by reporting openly gay Richard Grinnell to step down as ambassador to Germany. Grinnell, 53, has represented the United States in Germany since 2018. He is one of 5 openly gay ambassadors under the current administration and holds the distinction of being the highest-ranking openly gay presidential appointee in American history when he was named acting director of national intelligence, the director of national intelligence.
So the question here is this good or is this bad? Because, of course, having LGBT representation in Congress, in all of the White House, in governments across the world is a positive thing. But if it's not the best candidate, do you really want that person representing you? And that's what's at odds right here.
I'm very much on the same page. I think it's great an LGBTQ person is being represented at such an elite level, but I truly don't care about this story.
He is the tip of the sword of the administration's attitude of decriminalization of gay around the world. The loss of him as Germany's ambassador, a very, very important post, will be missed. So from that standpoint, I think it's bad that we lose him as an ambassador, and we don't currently know what he is going to contribute, especially in terms of LGBT for D&I.
Speaking up the world, we queue up the world. France has their first transgender mayor. Marikou, a 55-year-old woman, was elected over the weekend in the town of Tilloy-les-Massiens.
Good for you.
In northern France. The municipality has 541 within it. Koo was quoted as saying, "What's really surprising is that this is surprising," and expressed she is not an activist, but rather she believes she won on the merits of the programs she proposed.
I think this story is absolutely beautiful, and I do think that all people should win because of their merits, not because, oh, I want a minority, or oh, it's time for a girl, or oh, well, there's a gay person. I think you should be awarded your position because of who and what you are, not just what you are.
You know, in the theme of this story, I want to know when Misty's going to run for mayor of Wilton Manors, Florida.
That could happen.
Well, now we're thinking about that, and our friend Chef Josie, who's running for mayor of this. But that's the whole thing. It's going to get more interesting when we have multiple candidates that represent us competing, actually, especially in a place like this where it is so heavily LGBTQ, or at least that A of ally.
Queuing up the world. Students fight back after lecturer signs up for a dangerous gay conversion therapy forum. Dr. Caroline Norma is a lecturer in the School of Global Urban and Social Studies at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology University in Melbourne, Australia. That is a mouthful. She signed up to be a panelist on an online forum about a possible conversion therapy ban. The forum is organized by a known homophobic group, Australian Christian Lobby. One student commented, quote, I'm taking a science degree at a scientific institution. Having a lecturer peddling mysticism devalues the integrity of the degree that I am paying for.
Peddling mysticism. That quote tells you everything you need to know about this story going on in Australia. The one thing that I do think is possible is basically we have concluded, many states have banned conversion therapy. We understand it is basically torture. I'm very happy to report on stories of other countries around the world that are coming to the exact same conclusion.
That said, the idea of peddling mysticism is a little bit insulting to me. I basically took my degree in mysticism, adding that scientific aspect of it and peddling that into my brain wasn't something I needed. I didn't need biology, though it's been very helpful in life. I look forward to seeing more cases like this hopefully disappear.
I'm proud of the students for standing up for what they believe in, and I also believe conversion therapy is wrong. You cannot change your eye color no matter how much you pray it away, no matter how much you try to go through conversion therapy and get shocked because you see an image of somebody else with blue eyes. You are who you are, and you were made that way. You can't fight it.
You know, at Q News Tonight, we embrace science. Please, scientists, find the genetic marker, the gene that proves homosexuality. We queue up the world tonight by reporting students who speak out against a homophobic teacher in Poland endure hours of savage police interrogation. The students are reported to have been left shaken and crying due to the police's actions. The teacher, Dr. Iwad Budanzowski, boy, I murdered that, has said such things like abortion is murder and a normal family consists of one man and one woman. Poland's Deputy Prime Minister Jaroslaw Gowin considers this a free speech issue and pledged to present a bill to protect the freedom of free speech at Polish universities within the week.
What's really interesting about this is that Poland has an area where LGBTQ people can live. It's just a section of it, and anywhere else it is considered to be immoral, and they have different laws for it. I can only imagine if other countries did something of that nature and how here potentially it could create a civil war, though then again, what wouldn't today?
I think these police officers should be ashamed of themselves because when somebody calls them and needs help or they're afraid or their safety and they get berated because they called the police, guess who's not going to call the police the next time they need help?
You know, several times tonight we're going to talk about toxic masculinity. And if there's toxic masculinity in Europe, unfortunately, we report in story after story, it's going on in Poland. We queue up the world by reporting the United Kingdom's National Health Services, NHS, COVID-19 contact tracing app has really great risk for the LGBTQ community. Democracy advocate Kyle Taylor of Fair Vote UK understands the need for the app, but is worried and called an alarm about the consequences for LGBTQ rights in the future. Because of the app's data is centralized, all of the data will be held by the government. This means if a future government came to power that did not believe in LGBTQ rights, they very well could use this data to hunt members down in the community.
I know that Grindr and Scruff and other apps already track where I am, but I know that at least for now that is theoretically staying out of the hands of the government. I would definitely be worried about this. I mean, I come from a family that was part of the Holocaust. I would not want a registry of something that can be a hated group documented by the government. That said, we do have to keep coronavirus in mind, and security is at the opposite end of freedom. So what's going to hold out? We'll see.
My thoughts were along the same line. LGBT community members are already doing this with Grindr, etc. And I think the government is already paying attention to where you were. I mean, remember early in the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, they were tracking cell phone data of spring breakers, having no idea who those phones belonged to, but seeing them hurtle. They followed that little cell phone from one section of the beach to wherever they went in the United States of America. And it was shocking they had this ability.
I think the concerns that are being raised are valid and reasonable, but they're over-alarmist. The ship has sailed on what we do with data. We are not in a privacy world, and if we're willing to accept all of the kinds of tools and perks that we have in data and software, etc., it's just something we're going to accept. Now, let's catch up on all of the news surrounding COVID-19 tonight with our quarantine quickies. The first story tonight that is our daily reporting of the coronavirus facts, especially important to the LGBT community. So quarantine quickies. Coronavirus facts for Tuesday, May 26, 2020. We report on coronavirus case numbers. Remember, based on the standard acceptance of 7% of population of the LGBT community, the world's LGBTQ COVID-19 cases stand tonight at 392,538. America's LGBTQ COVID-19 cases stand at 119,435. Total world cases are over 5.6 million. Total USA cases are over 1.7 million. And we remind you that America is ground zero with only 4.4% of the population, but we account for 30.4% of all of the world's cases, and that percentage is slightly lower today. We report on coronavirus deaths. The world's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths stand at 24,377, and shockingly, America's LGBTQ COVID-19 deaths stand at 7,001. Total world deaths are 348,000, and today, May 26, we cross a threshold unlike any in American history. In a 90-day span, total USA deaths now stand at 100,001. We crossed this threshold while Q News Tonight was on the air. America is nearly a third of all COVID-19 deaths on the planet. With just 4.4% of the population, we account for 28.7% of the world's deaths, and that percentage is slightly higher today. We report on testing facts. We have crossed 15,187,000 tests taken in the United States, but that continues to be a dismal number. We give the White House Coronavirus Commission and the White House a grade of C-. It's improving, but remember there are 328 million Americans, which means we've only tested 4.6% of the population. The medical community recommended for Memorial Weekend that reopening should have been at 10%. Despite what Trump and Pence tell the LGBTQ community, testing and contact source tracing is our #1 solution to the pandemic. As a result, we continue to have Q News Tonight's Hall of Fame, the top states in testing. That is #3 tonight, North Dakota, #2 New York, and #1 Rhode Island. We also at Q News Tonight recognize the Hall of Shame states doing the worst job in testing. And we constantly say, LGBTQ America, we hope you don't live in one of these states because you likely don't know what's going on with coronavirus. And that is #5 Kansas, #4 Oregon, #3 Colorado, #2 Idaho, and #1 Puerto Rico.
Quarantine Quickies. Congress calls on federal government to gather LGBTQ data for coronavirus. A group of nearly 100 U.S. senators and representatives have demanded that the federal government collect data on sexual orientation and gender identity during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in order to measure the effect the virus has had upon historically marginalized communities.
In a letter sent to Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar last week, the members of Congress urged him to fulfill the agency's commitment to its Healthy People 2020 objectives by collecting data on how COVID-19 has impacted LGBTQ people.
Currently, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's COVID-19 case report form does not include questions about whether a patient identifies as LGBTQ. But critics say that the exclusion of that information ignores the objectives of Section 4302 of the Affordable Care Act's provisions to strengthen federal data collection efforts.
According to the letter to Azar, quote, "The current lack of demographic data that includes sexual orientation and gender identity will make it difficult for healthcare providers and policymakers to clearly identify and address the prevention and treatment needs of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities, and will exacerbate the challenges that these populations are already experiencing during the COVID-19 public health emergency."
Quarantine Quickies. Smoking may increase risk of catching COVID-19. We have a video for you. Watch this.
Let's start with the Chinese medical journal. They looked at 78 COVID-19 patients and found that the 5 with a history of smoking were 14 times more likely to develop pneumonia. That's a really small sample size. The New England Journal of Medicine has a bigger picture. They looked at 1,099 people in China who had the disease, and of the 173 of them who formed severe symptoms, almost 17% of those patients were current smokers. About 5% had previously smoked. It's important to remember that neither study focused specifically on smoking and COVID-19, leading critics to say that we don't have enough information still. But our 9 Health expert, Dr. Payal Kohli, believes it's about common sense.
Smoking increases your risk of not just contracting the COVID-19 infection, but it also increases your risk of having major life-threatening complications from this infection because it's a respiratory infection.
When it comes to marijuana and vaping, there's not a lot of that going on in China. So again, it's really hard to talk data when it comes to COVID-19. But Dr. Kohli says we already know what any smoking does to your lungs.
Because of the fact that you're a smoker, you have chronic inflammation inside your lungs, and that actually makes the lung cells, work less efficiently to clear particles and viruses that may enter. So your risk of contracting the infection is higher.
And she says the risk that your body will have a hard time fighting it off is higher too. So keeping respiratory symptoms healthy is key right now.
Especially during a time of a pandemic that we don't have a treatment for, that we don't have a preventive therapy for. It's really important to really maximize your chances of doing well if you were to catch this infection.
The majority of people who acquire COVID-19 experience mild to moderate symptoms and will fully recover without hospital treatment. However, several studies now suggest that people who smoke are significantly more likely than people who do not to develop a severe form of the illness.
For example, according to a recent study of COVID-19 cases in hospitals in mainland China, 11.8% of people who smoked had a non-severe form of the disease, while 16.9% had severe disease. Researchers at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York wanted to find out if people who smoke have more of these receptors in their lungs.
This would potentially make them more vulnerable to the infection. Studies are continuing, but alarming for the LGBTQ community, as smoking studies show a significant greater percentage of smokers in the LGBTQ community as compared to the general population.
Tonight, we cue up my commentary. Today is the unofficial first day of summer for 2020. Such a happy time of the year, but not this year. Here's some advice that will save your life. Reopening is happening. It can't be stopped now. Trump and Pence's very political life depends on it. November 3, they have an election to win, and they can't unless they reopen. Regardless of who you support, your life is more important. But your life is also dependent on what you do next, this week, this summer, and for all of 2020. Coronavirus is still dangerous. Unlike our president who said, it's going to go away in April, remember that? It will be like magic. Millions are infected, and millions more will be infected. We crossed the threshold today of 100,000 dead, and 7,000 in our LGBT community have died. Memorial Day weekend is a sad start of this summer's milestone because of coronavirus pandemic. The traditional meaning of our veterans salute was lost this year. Why? Because so many people, all of us, are dying, literally, or feel like we are dying in quarantine. Memorial Day was a breakout of the COVID-19 prison. Did you see this? Indiana Dunes National Park on Lake Michigan. Or how about this? From Ocean City, Maryland. What did you think about Osage Beach and Missouri's happy celebration? I could show you thousands of pictures like this from the unofficial start of summer, but Memorial Day was about our veterans. So this is the example our no mask president set. Did you see this? Strange that almost at the exact same moment in Arlington National Cemetery, this was the image from the Vice President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden in Delaware. It makes no sense. If someone is in your sphere and they don't have a mask on, you have every right to be angry. And I am. Here's why. We have reported studies from around the world on Q News tonight that masks reduce infection by as much as 88%. This is science, not White House voodoo of hopes and dreams, only to say they are willing to risk your life to prove it. If you wear a mask in reopening, combined with 6-foot social distancing, you move COVID-19 prevention into the 90th percentile. Coronavirus is harder to spread than first thought. Add frequent hand washing and stay at home closes in on nearly 100% effectiveness. Don't do this, and I hope your elderly grandmother is still here for the 4th of July. Your older parents for Labor Day. The start of our summer was full of American toxic masculinity and whatever the feminine version of it is. Why aren't we taking these steps? Memorial Day, there were millions of people celebrating reopening without masks while walking on sidewalks, in parks, on beaches, in stores, etc., etc., etc. You can't stop heavy breathing, cough, sneeze, even arguments and singing. This is the #1 cause of transmission. It's science. So if they don't have a mask on, you are at risk. Their rights literally do not trump yours. And the idiots that are arguing otherwise are just that, ignorant. You want proof? First, we have been lied to and fed misinformation. Test availability, number of duplicate counting of tests to justify reopening. The virus is only one person from China and it's just going to go away. But it's now almost June 1st. We know better. What is it about old white male politicians showing us it's manly to not wear a mask, wash your hands, and socially distance? It's called toxic masculinity. However, the virus is not a person to be conquered in bed. It's a virus we are at war with to kill. The worst place on the planet to be Memorial Weekend, besides the USA and Russia, was Brazil. The big three of uber toxic masculine presidents. In Brazil, their ignorance, including their Trump-like president, are murdering thousands. 46,000 new cases over the weekend, nearly 3,000 new deaths just over Memorial Weekend. And they are not experiencing White House-like January and February lies, incompetence, and misinformation failures. Today, they now know better. They just don't want to. The Brazilian president famously said coronavirus is overstated. He tells you how expendable you are when on coronavirus he says, quote, "So what? I'm sorry. What do you want me to do? Everyone will die someday." That's toxic masculinity. That's what Fort Lauderdale's busy LGBTQ Wilton Drive was on Friday night. That's Pensacola and Daytona Beach Memorial Weekend. That's the White House versus CDC fight on a watered-down reopening guidance plan. We just don't want to take these precautions. And that's ignorance, not freedom. So now you know. Your safety is not based on a White House, a Congress, and generally a governor, state, or local government. They are not going to save you. They are going to be willing to accept the consequences to get us to reopen, and at all cost. But you are not a statistical consequence. You have an obligation for your family and friends to protect yourself, then protect the people you care about. Let me be the first to say, pass mandatory face mask laws in public until coronavirus pandemic is contained. I know you just went apeshit, but to the mud pit constitutional lawyers in all of us, It's already been done. Federal, state, local laws for no smoking on planes or restaurants, for example. This was done because of public safety. No other reason. We repeatedly give up personal rights for societal health safety. What we are watching Memorial Day and the first day of summer proves. We're there. Make a decision. Are you or aren't you going to stand up against what we are watching? I pray you don't make the summer of 2020 your Memorial Day.
We'd like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in the Living Museum possible.
Tonight, we are broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World's AIDS Museum and Education Center. The museum is in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We joke. We're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth.
We end tonight's broadcast with The Big Finish. Short story mentions of LGBTQ news or news with a gay perspective. So here we go. First, on Q News tonight's The Big Finish. Lady Gaga admits Ariana Grande called her on her shit, was afraid of being a bad influence on the younger star.
The only part of that makes sense is that Ariana Grande called her out on things that she probably thought was bad. We all know that Ariana Grande is enough of a bad influence on herself. We should be worrying about the bad influence she's having on Lady Gaga, our savior. She is a saint, and in her presence, Ariana Grande was lucky to be. Here to save the world and the gays from getting, I guess, old. I'll see you soon, Gaga.
I saw the interview. What she was talking about was her own insecurity got in her way, and she kind of pushed Ariana Grande away because she felt like she wasn't worthy, and Ariana Grande was more of a star, so to speak. First, I will say anything worth having is worth working for. Second, public eye, every time you open your mouth, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And when you get thrown into the public eye, you start to put up barriers. Don't take it personal, Ariana. She kind of kept you out for protection. I'm glad you broke down the wall and got in.
Hashtag, who cares? Personally, I would think Lady Gaga would be much more ashamed of many of the outfits she shows up at award ceremonies in. But maybe that's just me. Love this big finish. PETA holds a game protest about a virtual fish museum in a Nintendo game called Animal Crossing.
I strongly believe in animal rights. I was even a vegetarian for 10 years and once belonged to PETA. But this action is also nonsense. PETA has had success going after Nintendo, Mario, and Pokemon in the past. After a time of crisis, Corona, they want to keep relevant. And what that means is focusing on the best news of the last 3 months. Animal Crossing, you've seen it everywhere. It's become my virtual world in COVID, I know that for a fact, and for many other LGBTQ people. I grow peaches, and I even have people over and invite them to my virtual dungeon. It has been a savior. True story.
So wait, okay. You're not allowed to keep fish in fish tanks anymore? How is that against ethical treatment of animals?
In virtual reality.
Especially in virtual reality. I mean, I don't have a fish tank now, but I like fish tanks.
Taking them from their home is the argument.
It is fitting that PETA would do a protest for a video game. The fish match the concern of PETA. The fish in virtual reality are just as fake as PETA's message is. The big finish. Youth pastor concocts an absurd story of black men kidnapping him rather than fess up to why he was in the hotel room in the first place.
Funny enough, this story doesn't actually take place in Florida. This time, a Florida man didn't do it. High five, Florida men everywhere.
Oh my goodness. First of all, my first thought is, why do they gotta be black? But I'm sorry to say that I'm not surprised that a youth minister hires a gay male escort and actually gets robbed and then lied that he was kidnapped, and that's how he got into the hotel in the first place. But his lie said he was kidnapped at CVS. Doesn't he know that they have video cameras in their parking lot? That's easily proven. And also, side note, I read this article, I was very fascinated with my background. The police officers obviously talked to the clerk at the hotel. The youth minister is a frequent visitor of this hotel with his other frequent male visitors. Shockingly, he gets robbed, and then he gets charged with a sodomy crime. Is that still illegal in Georgia?
Maybe the pastor should have consulted Andrew Gillum here in Florida on how to cover up a hotel meetup. Oh, wait, I've attacked a Democrat. Never mind. The big finish. No Context Tuesday. An inflatable hippo costume.
Hissing hippo.
Yeah, an inflatable hippo costume worn for safe hugs is completely selling out.
I love these inflatable costumes so much. Inflatable suits and fat suits are my favorite. In fact, my favorite inflatable suit video is of a T-Rex, no surprise, on a stripping pole. It's pretty epic. I do actually watch pole competitions because they're quite educational, but I encourage you to watch this one of the T-Rex on a pole. It is fascinating.
Wow.
Wow.
I think this story is beautiful, and touching is so important. Human contact is very, very important. So if you are, I would personally dress up as an inflatable unicorn. I've seen them, so I know they exist, but make sure and hug for 7 seconds or more. That's when you get the most therapy out of it.
Oh,
It's true.
I feel bad for my good friend Napoleon.
Uh-oh.
He bought all of these hippo outfits, and still no one will hug him. Maybe next year.
Wah, wah.
I would have all of the hippo costumes if I could. I would love that.
The big finish. Twins Class AA team, the Pensacola Blue Wahoos. Times are tough. They list their stadium on Airbnb for $1,500 a night.
The twin Yahoos must be like the Weasley brothers or the cute twins of Felicity Huffman on Desperate Housewives. They're always scheming around at how to make a buck off of the sluttiness of the young. That actually sounds more like the setup for Scream 5.
I personally love this story, that they're letting the general public use their space. I'm trying to think of so many social distancing events we could have there. You could spread out on the field with blankets and have a huge picnic, or you could do a wedding and everyone's a yard apart and have still the beautiful wedding. And I'm not a fan of baseball. This is baseball, right? It is, right? Okay. I'm not a fan of baseball. But I want to sleep in their 10-bed bedroom. I'm just saying. Somebody should rent this and invite me to stay the night.
Nobody thinks it's funny that we're renting our stadiums out and Airbnb. The only way this story gets any more Florida is if somewhere in the listing they offered secretly illegal drugs for half off if you stayed for more than a week in the stadium. My goodness.
Wow.
The big finish. Happy belated 81st birthday to Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen was in the single movie that both made me realize I wanted to be an actor and also that I should come out. I'd like to say it was his performance in Macbeth or King Lear or at least The Scarlet Pimpernel, but it was definitely X-Men 2. I love that a gay role model became a role model for me before I even knew he was gay. Happy birthday, Ian.
My movie that I fell in love with Ian was Gods and Monsters. I had a huge thing for Brendan Fraser back in the day.
God, and best he ever.
The house down. And I watched it because he was in it. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy. And then I found out he was gay in real life. I am a huge fan of trans people playing trans people, also non-trans people and non-gay people playing non-gay people. But I like it. I don't like it when Hollywood cast people that aren't. Am I not making sense?
No.
Okay,
I'm very Napoleon.
Hey, I understand exactly what she's saying.
I like it when, I hate it when Hollywood hires cis women to play trans women. Let's start there. And hiring straight actors to play gay roles when there's so many gay and trans actors that could play those roles very believably. And when I found out he was gay in real life, I was super fan. And also he's a huge, out and proud, outspoken advocate for our community.
Yeah.
Much respect.
I love Gandalf. He is so important as a representative of our LGBT community, and I wish him nothing but the best for his big day. But he's got terrible taste in Star Trek captains. And sorry, Ian, I'm loyal to the end on the Kirk. Sorry.
Picard's better. That is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show. But before we go,
today is an important milestone. And during this show of Q News Tonight, we have crossed 100,000 dead from coronavirus. 7,000 LGBTQ Americans have been lost crossing that threshold during our show.
We end our show with a special short documentary called Meet Me at the Rose Bowl, 100,000, The Ghosts of Trump's Coronavirus. This short documentary tells the story of how this happened and where would the ghosts of this pandemic go for one last goodbye.
We suggest Trump properties as gathering points for the ghosts, his hotels, real estate, entertainment venues, and more.
We hope you watch this powerful moment of the president who is responsible for so much of this, and to the people who are lost. They have become the ghosts of Trump's coronavirus. Watch this. America is experiencing a medical crisis unlike anything we have faced in 5 generations. But why? Donald Trump is not responsible for coronavirus. But as we cross 100,000 Americans dead during Memorial Day week, it is clear that he dramatically increased COVID-19's harm. Economic costs to our businesses, jobs, and economy. Effects on you personally in isolation, and ultimately the number of people that died. But why? The answer is because of delay, his lack of scientific and medical understanding, poor leadership, stalling and delays, making the right critical choices, and worst of all, the misinformation to the American people that was led by him. There are now more than 100,000 Americans dead from COVID-19. They are with us in spirit and memory. We honor them and their unnecessary sacrifice. They are the ghosts of Trump's coronavirus. The ghosts are now looking for places to gather. One final goodbye. In this short documentary, we suggest that the ghosts are gathering at Trump properties. This is the story of 100,000 dead. Meet me at the Rose Bowl, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus. Here is how the Trump tragedy unfolded. December 31, 2019, China advises the world of a new pneumonia of unknown cause. COVID-19 begins. January 2020, first coronavirus cases confirmed in America. January 2020, the Trump White House is warned over a dozen times of possible pandemic. No significant action is taken. January 22, CNBC asked Trump if there were any concerns about the virus spreading in the U.S. Trump replies, "We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine." February 2020. Italy becomes the world epicenter and closes the entire country. February 2020. The Trump White House downplays any significant effects of coronavirus. February 19. Trump assures the public against worrying about the coronavirus. Trump states, "I think it's going to work out fine. I think when we get into April, in the warmer weather, that has a very negative effect on that and that type of virus." February 24. Trump tweets, "The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA." He knew that that was not true. February 26. Trump falsely assures the public, "We're going to be pretty soon at only 5 people, and we could be just 1 or 2 people over the next short period of time." He knew that was not true. Trump brags how well he is doing. When you have 15 people and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to 0, that's a pretty good job we've done. February 28. Trump continues to misdirect a real response by tweeting, "It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear." On that day, at his final 2020 political rally in South Carolina in front of thousands, the president says, "The Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. This is their new hoax." Charleston is the 9th giant political rally Trump holds in January and February, all the while knowing infection spread is occurring. March 1. March begins the ghost of Trump's coronavirus. The first American death is headlines. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus are now here. They will look for one last gathering place to ask why this has happened, to say goodbye. Donald Trump has never been concerned with the emoluments clause as president, so he would likely want his real estate properties, hotels, and entertainment venues to be able to host the ghost of Trump's coronavirus. So they start to gather there. Here are some of the places they choose. March 2nd, Trump suggests the vaccine may be ready over the next few months, but Fauci quickly interjects to say it would be a year to a year and a half. March 3rd, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather in the Oval Office. There is room for up to 10. 9 are now dead. March 5, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather on Marine One. There is room for up to 14. 12 are now dead. March 6, Trump says at the CDC in Atlanta, anybody that wants a test can get a test. That's what the bottom line is. Months later, it's still not true.
Anybody that needs a test gets a test.
March 13, Trump finally declares a national emergency. Over lack of testing, Trump states, I don't take any responsibility at all. On that day, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather in the White House press briefing room. There is room for up to 49. 48 are now dead. March 14, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet in the penthouse of Trump International Las Vegas. There is room for up to 60. 58 are now dead. March 15, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet on Air Force One. There is room for up to 70. 69 are now dead. March 17, Trump falsely states he felt like the crisis was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic. On this same day, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet in the White House ballroom. There is room for up to 140. 121 are now dead. March 18, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet at Trump International Chicago's ballroom. There is room for up to 250. 171 are now dead. March 19, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet Trump at the National Golf Club Bedminster. There is room for up to 250. 239 are now dead. March 23rd, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet at Trump Mar-a-Lago in the Donald J. Trump Ballroom. There is room for up to 700. 689 are now dead. March 24, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet in the White House Rose Garden. There is room for up to 1,000. 957 are now dead. March 25, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet at Trump International Washington. This hotel, blocks from the White House, is the #1 criticism for the president's personal gain as president. There is room for up to 1,300 in the ballroom. 1,260 are now dead. March 26, for 3 months, the rest of the world suffered the most from COVID-19. But today, because of President Trump's response, America will begin a gigantic ascent as the ground zero of the world in cases and deaths. On this day, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet at the Trump National Doral Miami in the ballroom. There is room for up to 1,700. 1,614 are now dead. March 27, Trump signs the first $2 trillion emergency spending coronavirus bill. This will later grow into trillions more spent. The economic failure tidal wave begins in America because of Trump's mismanaged economic response. Today, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet on Trump's Wallman skating ring in New York. There is room for up to 2,200. 2,110 are now dead. March 29, President Trump falsely claims that he inherited obsolete and broken tests from the Obama administration. The long list of who he blames begins. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus go back to where it all starts. June 16, 2015. Trump Tower, New York City. Donald Trump comes down the escalator to announce he will run for president of the United States. This will lead to economic chaos and the largest number of American deaths in a 90-day period in history. March 31, Trump Tower. It's going to take every standing room space in the 5-story atrium, but there's room for all of the ghosts of Trump's coronavirus. Capacity 5,200, 5,151 are now dead. This is the last Trump property that can accommodate the ghost of Trump's coronavirus. The numbers, in the president's favorite word, are now just too huge. April 2nd, Trump blames state governors for supply shortages in their states. It's designed to deflect White House mismanagement. April 4, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather at the Opryland Hotel. There is room for up to 11,000. 10,384 are now dead. April 8, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather at the Hollywood Bowl. There is room for up to 18,000. 17,691 are now dead. April 9. Today is a full year without Senate-confirmed Secretary of Homeland Security, who would have been the central role in pandemic response. Instead, Trump personally manages the response. This adds to the crisis. April 10. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather at Madison Square Gardens. There is room for up to 22,000. They'll have to squeeze in as 22,038 are now dead. April 12. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus is confirmed as Dr. Anthony Fauci states that no one is going to deny that earlier mitigation efforts would have saved lives. Those efforts were prevented by Donald Trump. April 17. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather at Fenway Park. There is room for up to 37,731. 37,448 are now dead. April 24. Trump suggests injection inside the human body with a disinfectant like bleach or alcohol could help combat the virus. The makers of Clorox and Lysol pleaded with Americans not to ingest their products. April 26. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather at the historic Yankee Stadium. There is room for up to 54,251, a tight squeeze, as there are now 54,256 dead. May 5. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus can gather at the Superdome in New Orleans. There is room for up to 74,295. 72,271 are dead. The most incredible milestone of our lifetime is reached. Appropriately, we honor the ghost of Trump's coronavirus during Memorial Day week 2020. Our memorial begins to the 100,000 lost to Trump's coronavirus pandemic. Memorial Day week. The ghost of Trump's coronavirus can meet at the Rose Bowl. There is room for up to 100,000, and 100,000 are dead. This is the largest loss of American lives in 90 days in history. Estimates are that 7,000 LGBTQ Americans lost their lives by Memorial Day week to Trump's coronavirus. This is also the largest number of deaths in a 90-day span for this community in history, including AIDS. Unfortunately, the ghost of Trump's coronavirus can only gather at the Rose Bowl for a short farewell. The stadium must be cleared for the next 100,000 because June 1, 2020 projects 114,000 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. July 1, 2020 projects 138,592 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. August 1st, 2020 projects 146,818 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. September 1st, 2020 projects 161,000 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. October 1st, 2020 projects 175,000 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. November 1st, 2020 projects 190,000 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. December 1, 2020 projects 204,000 ghosts of Trump coronavirus. And on the one-year anniversary of China's bulletin on a mysterious new virus, December 31, 2020, America will celebrate our upcoming New Year's Eve, the end of one of the worst years in American history, as projections are for nearly 220,000 ghosts of Trump's coronavirus. Estimates are that 15,400 LGBTQ Americans lost their lives by New Year's Eve 2020 to Trump's coronavirus. Let's all pray for a better 2021. We tribute our needless loss. We hug and say goodbye. You will never be forgotten, the 100,000 ghosts of Trump's coronavirus.